There are secrets out there, guys, performance marketing secrets, and knowing just one or two of them can absolutely light up your funnels. Let's go. This is the Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic. Join me as I uncover the secrets of the world's most elite CMOs and marketing leaders. The Revenue Driven CMO is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI-driven performance agency that makes you smarter. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your main man, Chris Mechanic, here with a really interesting and exciting guest. Today's guest is a blend. He's got that, that analytical data and scientific mind, but he couples that with a sense of servant leadership and an incredibly high EQ. A really inspirational leader. He's built B2B marketing teams from the US and Europe to Australia and Japan. So truly a global player, and also has worked at, some of the largest enterprises in the world to some of the, smaller and hyper growth type companies and everything in between. But in every single role, he's always had a proven track record of helping companies scale. Currently, he is at Acquia, which is a client of ours, and I love them deeply. And he was just recently promoted to SVP of Product and Solutions Marketing. Previously, he was VP of Growth. So we were joking just about how, he's the utility player. Like he can just play many different positions. But super duper excited to get into it with him, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tom Bianchi from Acquia. How are you today, Tom?
Very well. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing great. I'm really excited to have you on the show. I apologize. You can hear I'm a bit just getting over a cold, so my voice is a bit rough today, but we'll do our best.
Sounds good.
Well, we always like to lead with the value here at Revenue Driven CMO. I'm really excited to hear your secret. Why don't you share with everybody what is one of your biggest secrets to the success that you've been able to produce in your marketing career?
Yeah, we were talking the other day about this, and for a while I was kind of, struggling to pinpoint it, and maybe that's partially because I've played so many different roles throughout my career in different capacities of marketing. But the one thing that's been true is it's always been B2B, and it's always been software and technology. So when I narrowed it down to that, which is still pretty broad, I started to think back through all of the different companies that I've worked for, and really what was the secret that helped out. And for me, it's all been about understanding the product market fit. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as you get that as a marketer, and as soon as you can dissect really down to the pain point that the audience that you're trying to market to is truly feeling, then it's almost like everything else downstream of that becomes so much easier to do. It becomes so much easier to, create messaging and write campaign copy. It's so much easier to help direct the, and drive the development of the product. You can understand some of the mechanics of your funnel better because you can align it to how people are acting and behaving in the real world. And so being able to dissect really what the product market fit is, I think has been the big superpower that I've possessed. And brilliant. I think that comes from, I did an engineering degree at college. So I've always had that analytical mind. And I think that's really what's helped me pick up technology quickly, even if I'm not a domain expert or a subject matter expert, and translate it into business value.
Yeah, there's a lot there. It reminds me of this book. Have you heard of this book called The One Big Thing by Gary Keller? It's the founder of Keller Williams Realty, which is big here in the States.
I have heard of it. I've not read it, so I don't want to claim something that I've not done. But yeah, I've heard of it. Tell me about it a bit, though.
So it poses a really demanding but really interesting question, which is, what is the one big thing, right? Not two big things, not three, but the one big thing, such that by doing, everything else becomes either easier and or unnecessary. So it's the one big thing where everything else, becomes either easier or unnecessary. And I think, the point that you're making here is it sounds like in a world of marketing, that product market fit is that one big thing, makes everything downstream of that easier, including selling, right? Like once you get the lead on the phone, selling the deal, closing the deal will become much easier if that sales team has a really deep understanding of that too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, just remember that if you're really doing a good job in the marketing department, then when you first launch a campaign to market, you're going to enable your sellers, right? That's part of the process. You're
Yeah,
hopefully not firing campaigns out the door and not informing your sales organization what you're doing, because that's not a good thing. But
yeah,
again, if your campaign messaging makes sense because you understand your product market fit, then the workload to enable your sales force to best respond to anything that comes from that campaign becomes easier because you know exactly how to articulate the pain points. You know exactly what the prospect's going to say when you get them on the phone, for example. So yeah, I totally agree with your logic there, that anything downstream of that, if this is the one big thing for me, it makes a lot of sense.
yeah. So, I want to talk about how, right? I mean, you could write a whole book on like how to identify and how to better understand that product market fit. I want to just like, get the Cliff's Notes version. But before we do that, I'm curious. You've been at multiple different companies over the years. In your experience, when you enter these companies, do they generally have a strong understanding of product market fit, or do you find them so like basically on average, would you say 100% they nail it? Would you say like, they're in the middle, kind of know it, or would you say that they're way off and like need major surgery, to be even near the mark?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because I think the answer is different for every single company, and I'll also give you like two different versions of the answer here. So typically, if a company is more in, and you were reading through my bio before, the types of companies that I've worked for, if it's a more in that startup hyper growth, they actually tend to understand their product market fit better sometimes than the bigger companies, and that seems paradoxical to say. But if you think about the world of venture capital and private equity funding that goes on in the software industry that I play in a lot, these people have effectively had to secure millions of dollars of backing and funding from an organization that ostensibly doesn't really know too much about the market that they're in, and at least sound like they know enough about how their product fits in the market and what the market opportunity is. So
Yeah.
typically speaking, in a early stage software company, the product market fit understanding is really solid.
Yeah.
And you would have either the CEO or the CMO very easily be able to articulate what the value is and why their product fits in the market and what the market opportunity is. When you get to the bigger companies, they typically have got to a point where they don't just have one product category they play in. They've probably made some acquisitions. And so they've got multiple product categories. Some of them are complementary, some of them might be completely, disconnected from each other. And so that sense of not just product market fit, but company market fit starts to morph a little bit. And so some of the messaging problems that you're trying to solve become more and more complex. So, as a kind of average rating, I would say, if you're a smaller company, a good 8 out of 10 know where their product fits, know where their companies fit within the market, and can play, relatively straightforwardly, and the whole business is on board with that. When you get to those bigger companies, the 5, 10,000 people, the billion, 2 billion, 15 billion in revenue,
Yeah.
they actually struggle to articulate that succinctly.
Yeah.
And I would say that's, 2 out of 10 of them have got a good story there.
Yeah. Now, and that's really interesting actually. The job gets harder, right? With scale. Like as you get bigger, as you're in different categories, as you may have, completely disparate products. So I guess the product market fit equation happens on a product by product basis, on a category by category basis. Or how do you think about that?
So there's a couple of things at play here. You talked about, some of the things that are different in those two companies. The other thing that happens typically when you get to be a bigger company with a multi-product offering is you shift from being a hyper growth company that might actually be spending more than it is making in the software world, right?
Yeah.
To a company that very quickly shifts to needing to be profitable to exist.
Yeah.
And so this other pressure happens, which also is really important in how you choose a message for a product and change it. And that's that budget decreases. Per unit sold, your efficiency metrics become way more important than just getting $1 of revenue through the door.
Mm.
And that has an interesting effect on how you prioritize messaging for products, because actually what you're trying to do really is take multiple products together simultaneously, because it's more efficient to do that than just keep running a single funnel for a single product. And so there's a third dynamic that is not just product market fit, it becomes solution market fit. And so there is also this art to being able to understand a customer's pain point and how a multi-product solution that your company might be able to offer can really help with that, and then taking that message to market through the right channels. And there's a whole load of internal politics that you have to be able to understand to do that too. So I think the art of solution market fit is really important. And if you've been well grounded in those smaller companies, right, with the single product to market, and you really understand how to back it out of what's the customer's pain point, the rest is still easier. If you just start your career in a multi-product company and they haven't quite got this solution selling down yet, it's going to be strange, and there's going to be a lot of internal conflict that you have to solve before you can actually finalize what that solution market fit is.
Interesting. So in a world where there's many products, many categories, that solution market fit is really the holy grail.
Absolutely.
It no longer, gets as granular necessarily as the product. It's basically, how can we bundle these together, to turn it into a solution for you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer.
Yeah, exactly. And the solution, of course, should be more valuable than just a single product, right? We should not be collecting products together and selling them as a solution for the sake of it. It should be that you've acquired or developed complementary products that together make a better solution. Because sometimes that happens in companies too, where it's like, hey, we bought this and we bought this. Can you sell them together? It's like, why would we do that? Because we need to. Well, does the customer need that?
Yeah, I was pitching a deal to a company that did just that. They were like, yeah, we're in this space. I won't say what it is, but we're in space A, and like we made this acquisition, and it's like a totally different customer, totally different product, totally different use case. Like, what's our SEO strategy? And I'm like, what's your acquisition strategy? Why did you do that?
Yeah, it's funny, right? And companies do this all of the time. I think the next level as well is if you're a professional in your career and you're looking to progress, one of the things that I've always tried to do, and I was lucky enough that I had a mentor early on in my career that kind of gave me this tip. If you're looking for a job, though, I almost feel like it's your responsibility as a candidate that's interviewing to be asking questions around product market fit. Don't be distracted by 20% more pay and the next level of job title from company A or B or C. You should choose out of those three the one that has the best product market fit, because it's actually going to help your career the best in the long run. The company's probably going to grow faster. The company's probably going to perform faster. If it's got an exit strategy or if it's publicly traded, it's going to please its shareholders better, which means that there's going to be more money either in profit or in funding, whichever way you look at it, which means your career is probably going to progress. So it sounds really counterintuitive that you don't start with, well, I want myself to be successful and I want this much pay and I want that much, that as my title. Actually, if you go back to product market fit when you're choosing a company to work for, because you should always choose a company to work for, not just interview for anything blindly. That is your secret weapon to career progression too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. So anybody, so this recording basically would be gold for anybody that is on the job market right now, because they could basically just like, take a product market fit lens to the interview with them and probably command a higher wage. Um, I have a couple of other things for you. And as we're talking more, like more and more questions and ideas are coming to mind. So I'd mentioned that I want to talk about like, okay, how do we identify this? But even before we get there, let's suppose, many marketers are listening to this. They're probably wondering, well, do I have a good product market fit? Like, how do we know? Do you have some kind of a rubric or some kind of a framework that you use to even first answer the question of like, do we have a product market fit right now, or do we not? Or where are we on that spectrum that we were talking
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, first hand data is always a really, good starting point. So if you're already at a company, how are your sales doing? Right? How's your opportunity close rate? Are you getting lots of people who talk to you, but then nobody buys? Because that's a pretty good sign that your product doesn't fit the market need. It could be because of sales execution problems, which is a whole different conversation. But as a quick indicator, that's a good place to look. If you are outside of a company trying to look in, then keep your perspective outside. Look at analyst, reports around the company that you're working for, in whichever industry you're playing in. There's always an industry analyst of some sort. You can look also at really basic things like product reviews. So look at product review sites and see what the end users are saying about the product, and get a real insight into the problems that they're reporting, and so on and so forth. And
about?
that can be a secondary consideration, especially if you're trying to choose a company to go and work for. By the way, you can have a company that has a really good product market fit, but it can have an unreliable or a product that falls over all the time, or it doesn't do as it maybe could do because of performance issues. It's another little
Yeah.
flag to look for. But yeah, start with those reviews. Start with this external data if you're outside looking in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. So from an internal perspective, it's basically like, hey, are we closing sales?
Yeah.
And maybe also retention or, upsells could be a good metric. Then from an external perspective, it's about the reviews, the analyst reports. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So now that we have benchmarked ourselves, so we know, okay, we're probably somewhere in the middle, right? Uh, what are the steps involved with, going from meh to like, wow.
Yeah. So firstly, you've got to get the understanding of what does wow look like. Right. And there's a load of different ways to go at this depending on where you're at. The single place that I would start, if you can, is with your customers. Go and talk to them. Understand what their pain points are, and then ask them the question. Firstly, what does it mean if we solve that problem to you as an individual, to you, to your company, right? Because then you'll understand the magnitude of the pain point. But then you should be asking a really open question, and that's, does product A or any of its competitors fully solve that problem today? Because what you're looking for there is, even if it might hurt, you want them to tell you, well, your competitor is actually better, but you were 30% cheaper, so we went with you.
Mm.
Or, no, you're actually the best in the market, and we couldn't believe how much we, were able to secure your solution for. It's so valuable for our business. There's two pieces of key information there. So one, if your competitor is significantly better than you, then they should tell you. If your competitor's loosely the same as you, but you charge more or they charge more, then you've got a pricing thing to think about. If there is just no demand for your product and your customers are like really shy and they're not talking to you, you need to figure out what capabilities within the product are missing So then your next level of inquiry is, what are the actual features and functions of my product or service that would solve that problem? Right? Because if you can solve that problem, then you've got great product market fit straight away. And then the value of your product goes up. So if you're trying to grow as a company, you can increase the price of your product and not affect sales, right? We can have a whole conversation on price elasticity of demand, but I'm not going to go there today. And that is the secret sauce. If you can figure out what's missing to solve that pain point and then what value it creates to the business, you've got that killer combo of a product that then can ascend to be the wow and not the meh. And you can make the most money from doing so coldly because you can set a price that's probably higher than people are paying for it today.
I love that. I like the wow and not the mad too. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I want to talk about Acquia here in just a second. Uh, but last question on product market fit,
Yeah.
and I don't mean to put you on the spot here. But aside from Acquia, can you think of a few brands that you think are really just like nailing it?
With the product market fit equation specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good question. Uh, I think, a surefire sign is anybody that where their business is growing, super rapidly and has had great performance. So there are certain in software in particular, there are certain companies that I think about that are kind of flying right now. I'll give one example for the B2B marketers out there. So there's a great ABM platform called Sixth Sense. If you haven't used it, you should look into it. They really landed their messaging to articulate the pain point that most marketers were going through, and that is trying to solve the ABM advertising problem. Right, you want to target specifically at certain accounts rather than a more wide-reaching program, and their product did that.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, I think, about Sixth Sense is they were really clear about their vision, and there was a point where they were the up and coming in the market as opposed to the market leader. Demand base for a long time was the ABM market leader, and Sixth Sense has kind of snuck up from behind by really understanding that pain point and then going and executing it with the product vision. So that for me is not only a story of a company that's got a really good product market fit, but one that understood the assignment and went and built it as well.
Yeah. No, that's a really good one. Now I'm curious, do you feel like, and I'm sorry, I know I said that was the last question on product market, but
No, it's good.
what's the difference, do you think, or what are some of the bigger differences with a product company versus service company? Like, do you think it's more challenging for a service company or less?
Depends on the place or the space that they play in. But the bigger challenge for a service company, having worked for one in Rimini Street a few years back now, who we successfully IPO'd in 2017. The bigger challenge with a service industry is, or a service offering, is to be able to deliver that same end result time and time again, because ultimately it's all about the people that you have to be able to deliver a service, as opposed to something that you have programmed just to operate on rinse and repeat over and over again in like software. So that's the biggest challenge, is your service might have a great fit, but you've got to be able to consistently deliver that. Often when you're thinking about variables that you don't actually control, because some of those variables could be things that are to do with your customer and how they're set up, as opposed to how you're delivering your product. So that's the biggest difference for me, is that a service offering very often has to morph and change to suit the customer more than a physical or intangible product like a piece of software does. And so being able to control those variables is very difficult, and that can be interesting.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So it sounds generally like a little bit more challenging for a service company.
Yeah, you've got to be on it, and that customer feedback loop is like even more important. You need to be doing it real time. And so when we were at Rimini Street, for example, like the amount of work that we did on customer satisfaction, surveys, reporting, NPS measurement, was hypercritical, because actually that was the proof point of the value of the product more than some of the very tangible, ROI metrics. Right? We had a great pricing model. It's, we'll do whatever your incumbent is doing for 50% of the price. So marketers dream, right? But the proof point was not in the, yeah, we can deliver you ROI. Everybody got that really easily. The proof point actually became, hey, can you do that for me? I know you did that for them. I totally believe you. I've even spoken to them and they told me that you did it. But can you actually do that for me? Because I think I'm different than them. So that was a lot of our marketing messages, customized and focused, and relating that it's not just one case study that says this, is all of our customers that say this.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And it reminds me of a story from our early days. We started as an SEO company. Like, all we did was just organic search. Uh, and our assumption was that the value prop was like, hey, we'll get you number one on Google. We'll get you more website visitors, more phone calls, these things. And customers did value that. But we started learning more and more, because we were selling to like micro businesses, tiny mom and pop shops at the beginning. But we learned that, like, they didn't know how to access their websites. They didn't know how to log into hosting, like they didn't know how to update or make changes. And
Right.
for us, of course, that kind of stuff was very easy. So we started basically just like taking control of their websites, and we wouldn't even charge any more from them. But then when they would give us testimonials and stuff, they would barely even mention the SEO. They would just call us their web guys, you know? So, and that's why as we grew, we always like maintained that development team and that technical team, because, a lot of times they're the unsung hero in the equation.
Yeah, I can believe that. And actually, I feel really lucky here at Acquia, that, I mean, we'll get into this in a minute. We're a website company for people that don't know about it, right? We help thousands of customers around the world host their website. But we're really lucky because, compared to a lot of B2B marketing teams, we actually have our own in-house dev team.
Right.
And the superpower that gives us as a company is our speed to market with changes on the website and rolling out programs and being able to control and do all of that in-house is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's very common for a company, even of Acquia's size, right? 300 million plus in revenue and 1,500 people in size. It's really common for the website still to be completely outsourced and managed by an agency just like yourself. So
Totally.
to have the luxury of that, if I dare say, is amazing.
Yeah. Or it's like, a lot of times it's the product teams
Mm-hmm.
that that are tasked with it, but of course it's like the lowest thing on their priority list.
Yep.
Cool. Well, that's a great seg. Let's talk about Acquia.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned, I know you got your start largely in hosting. But I guess tell us just, I mean, I know it, like, you guys are a big deal in my mind, and I think you're a big deal in the industry too. But just for folks that don't know, do you want to say anything else just to intro?
Yeah, sure. So if you haven't already heard of Acquia, no problem. I like to think of us as and this is a bold claim, but I think we can back it up. We're the unsung hero in the web hosting business and in the digital experience business as we are today. A lot of people will have heard of some of our competitors like WordPress or Adobe, right? In their product, Adobe Experience Manager. But our founder, a guy called Dries, Belgian, had this great idea more than 20 years ago now to build a content management system, which is called Drupal. And that's where it all started. The thing that makes us the unsung hero, and why I feel bold in saying that, and rightly so in justifying that, is that he came at it with an open source philosophy. So Drupal, which is our core CMS and what we help people build websites on all around the world, is completely open source and completely free. So if you're trying to build a massive website at scale, or even something just relatively straightforward like a brochureware site, You can, if you choose, go and download Drupal completely free from the Drupal Association, host it on a server yourself, and as long as you know how to code a little bit, you can build a front end to that website and put all of your content in there, and you can run a website yourself. So there are so many websites that came into existence because of the accessibility to a proper, carefully developed, secure, well-governed CMS that Drupal was, that just wouldn't have happened for others. So all that said, fast forward now to 2023, and we're a digital experience platform. What does that mean? Well, everybody has a digital experience platform. They might just call it something else to them. It could be a combination of their CRM, their marketing automation tool, and their website, and the back end of their website. It could have some elements of personalization. It could have some data components in it, and things like lead flow management and all of those things. But all of those things together are the digital experience platform that you have built to serve your end customer with the digital experience that they get by interacting with your brand. And that's what Acquia does. All of those things, apart from the CRM bit, what we help our customers with. And they build big, beautiful, reliable, well-governed digital experiences all over the world.
Awesome. Yeah, and I didn't realize, I knew that you guys were Drupal focused. I didn't realize that you actually invented Drupal. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's one of our biggest unique selling points for sure. And yeah, Dries is still our CTO and co-founder today. He's still involved in the business. I talk to him a couple of times a week. He's a really nice guy. He's also, and Dries, this is a massive compliment if ever you see this, he's also so down to earth. It's unbelievable. I've met some founders in my time that are very, very different to him, and he's so humble and yet clever at the same time that it's a real superpower of Acquia's to have him on board for sure.
Yeah, and I mean anybody who invents like one of the top 10 CMSs in the world, it's got to be pretty clever, I would say.
He's a smart guy for sure. And the best thing is that because he's so humble, he's really good at also articulating how other people should solve problems without seeming overpowering. So yeah, he's a smart guy, but he knows how to use his superpower of being smart to kind of help the rest of the company too, which is really cool.
It is really cool. Yeah, I could use a lesson in that probably. So tell me about some of the biggest wins that you've had to date. Like, what are some of the moments that you're most proud of, or even just one of the moments that you're most proud of in your tenure there at Acquia?
Well, so I've talked about all of these different companies that I've worked at and the product market fit and all of that sort of stuff. But as you hinted at in the my kind of bio at the start, the common thread has always been hypergrowth. And that was actually my kind of first task here at Acquia, was to help get the European region, the Europe, Middle East, and Africa, the EMEA region, on that path to hypergrowth. So I joined right at the beginning of 2020, just before the pandemic. I had 3 months, 2 and a bit months where we were in the office and stuff, and then we were in lockdown. But fortunately, I got to come out to HQ in Boston and meet the team there and get to know all of my colleagues in person before we went into the remote working world.
That's great.
That was super helpful to have an impact. And so I guess the headline of that part of my career here at Acquia and the story is, in kind of just about 3 years, in EMEA, we went from around 30 million in revenue to over 80 million.
Wow.
So
holy crap.
So that's not just me. That's not just something that I did. That was the whole team working together. We had great local leadership, great sales leadership, and a really clear strategy of understanding our product market fit and how we were going to execute on it. And the secret sauce was really straightforward. It was, if we increase our retention rate and the amount of cross-sell that we have to our install base while simultaneously driving, new growth, we get the double whammy, right? you get a decent organic growth rate from your new business clients coming through the door. And then you're getting upsell and cross sell from your existing clients. And then those two things, as time goes on, start to be the flywheel that catalyst each other. Because then every new client that you've got through the door that you've sold one solution to, there's still room to cross and upsell other solutions to as well. So the two help each other out, and you end up with this massive flywheel effect. And that's what we were able to do in EMEA here at Acquia. And that's been amazing. I definitely learned a lot along the way, but being able to effectively market to both customers and new business prospects with multiple solutions, with multiple messages, right? That big problem that we talked about in the product market fit conversation, helped generate loads of inquiries, loads of leads that, we had a great BDR team that was able to execute on them, and we made it work. It was brilliant. It was one of those times in my career where everything seemed to come together at the same time, and we were firing on all cylinders. And yeah, it was a beautiful machine to watch in action.
That really is awesome. And the formula there that you laid out, which is like net new acquisition and upsell, cross sell, it's not rocket science necessarily, but there's not that many companies that do both of those things well.
Right.
Like most companies tend to be better at one of those things than in the other. And it really saps, the overall growth rate. So that's inspiring, and that's a great lesson of itself. You'd mentioned, you were getting a bunch of inquiries and the BDRs were doing well. What is the biggest driver of your revenue engine now? Like, which motions, which channels, which techniques or strategies, like what's really driving the engine, especially in terms of net new?
Yeah, well, I kind of hinted at this if you were listening closely earlier on in one respect. So we're a multi-product company, right? We serve multiple solutions. And so, of course, like every company, as we start to grow, we look to gain efficiency in our execution. And so one of the things that we really worked hard at was actually creating the right content with the right message, and then really driving organic inbound to supplement all of the targeted ABM stuff that we were doing outbound before. Then when you layer on the feedback that you get from that organic inbound, right, where the natural demand is in the market because you can see it. And then you start to alter your paid programs to also align with that. You get that double whammy again, right? In a very different way, but from your marketing programs, you get the double whammy. You are aligning your paid programs with where the natural demand is coming from. Yeah. And so that's really helped us, I would say, over the past year and a half, 2 years, which from a macroeconomic perspective have been relatively turbulent. We've been very good at executing against our plan. I'm not going to talk about any of Acquia's, confidential numbers externally, but we've been pretty much on target, if not above, for like 6 or 7 consecutive quarters, while the world's been in a relatively tumultuous state. And I think really the secret sauce was just, was understanding where the natural demand was, and our kind of organic first strategy really helped us with that.
That's smart. That's really smart. So there's definitely synergies between organic and paid, but then and sometimes you do it vice versa, right? Sometimes you look at what's working in paid and then you target via organic, but I think that's really smart to look at what's happening organic and then target via paid. Very smart.
Yeah, one of the things that we had to do as a kind of proxy to this as well, which this is advice that I would give to anybody, actually, whether you're, whether you're in tech or any business. We actually did a MarTech stack evaluation as well, and made sure that our tech stack supported the customer journeys that we needed. So we started to think about the capabilities that we needed in our tech stack and really mapped that out. And so, I'll give you for example, what role does chat play in your funnel today, right? Where do leads enter chat? Is that a mid-funnel activity? Is that a bottom-of-funnel activity? What happens once they've engaged with chat? Do they go straight to sales? Do they engage in more content? How do we host that content? How do we refer that content? Do we need an ABM campaign once somebody's come inbound? How does the data go from our chatbot through to our ABM platform to help us target? So as part of that mix and getting to the optimal workflow as efficiently as possible, we also went through a capability mapping process. And
Mm,
that was kind of the underpinning activity that helped us understand what's the right tech stack to help us execute on the things that we need to do to have a great digital experience for our customers as well.
interesting. Interesting. Well, it sounds like you guys are killing. You are a very impressive marketer, as well as I can tell you're an amazing leader. Um, Surely it's not all wine and roses. I'm curious, like, what are the big challenges that you're facing right now, or what's kind of keeping you up at night?
Yeah, great question. I think the the biggest challenge that I see on the horizon is actually around uh, getting our message in the hands of our sales team and our full go-to-market organization as efficiently as possible and at the right time as possible. Because again, we're now multi-product, right? We're a multi-product organization.
Yeah,
And just like in marketing, our sellers also have to be able to deal with conversations about multiple pain points and solving those challenges that our customers have with
yeah,
one or more of our products, right? And just like any growing organization, we have new salespeople coming through the door all of the time, and getting them enabled successfully and ramped up successfully to then be able to execute on the output of all of the marketing campaigns that we have
mm,
is tricky because not everybody is able to articulate a multi-product value proposition to a customer within like 2 months of starting a new job.
right.
And it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to train the sales force with the campaign messages, with the solution level messages. And so we want to be as best we can at that. We want to be the best at doing that for our sellers,
Yeah,
because we truly believe that to have a great product is one thing, but to deliver then a great service around it and have sellers who are thought leaders almost is going to be a key differentiator for us in the market that we play in. So we don't want people to have a bitter taste in their mouth when they walk away from a sales conversation. We want them to actually go, that salesperson didn't seem like a salesperson. They were actually really helpful.
yeah, yeah. No, that is certainly a challenge. What are you doing? I mean, how are you guys tackling that?
Yeah, we've actually been through a process which really helped us understand those pain points better. So we surveyed a lot of our customers who use various combinations of our products, and we actually said to them that question that I suggested everybody ask before:
Yeah,
what's the problem you're trying to solve? How well do we solve it for you? And we were able to then map what we internally call desired customer outcomes. So these are things that our customers are trying to achieve. And so the way that we're trying to solve that problem is actually arming all of our go-to-market team, sales and marketing, and even our partners, by the way, too, who sell on our behalf, um, with messaging that backs into those pain points first. We organize everything that we do around those desired customer outcomes. What are our
yeah,
customers actually trying to achieve? The test is almost you should be able to have an entire pitch conversation with a customer without mentioning a product. You should the whole conversation should be framed completely in what is your pain point and how might technology of some kind help solve that problem. Imagine if you could automate this workflow. Imagine if that data was connected and integrated here. It's not about what does this product do, it's about how can we potentially help you solve your pain point, and nothing more than that.
interesting. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. You know, you gave me an idea as you were talking. We have a sister company called OBO, and they work more, I would say, like on the data rev ops, kind of
Mm-hmm.
marketing ops side of things where we're more performance. Um, but they have this tool, they built this tool, which is like a chatbot, like imagine ChatGPT, but it's trained on your documents, right? So
Mm.
like that new salesperson could go and be like, you know, like what's the the 30-second value prop for the CDP product, for
Right.
instance, and just like hit that in the chat bot, and then it would generate that.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. Instead of like searching the docs, it's just a utility. Like I'm sure that they could just go search the server and find that somewhere, but it lives right within Slack. Like you can be like slash whatever you call it, and then just type the
Yeah.
question.
I think you found two really interesting concepts there. So one is obviously the use of AI in many ways with inside of organizations. The second though is you're talking about how people like to learn there.
Yeah,
And that's been actually one of the things that we've observed through this, trying to get better at helping our salespeople be better.
yeah,
Is that, a salesperson today likes to learn in a very different way than a salesperson 10 years ago. If ever you've worked for a software company, anyone that's listening, you'll have gone through, and you joined them 10 years ago, you'll have gone through like a 2-week intensive new hire training where you were all in a classroom and you studied everything about every single product. You'll have then probably had to like practice a pitch, and you'll have done that real time. You might have even recorded a video and had to present to people and so on and so forth. Well, that's all very like synchronous learning in a classroom, high touch environment. People like to learn generally in life now by consuming things in really small sound bites at a time that suits them at the point of the day when their mind is ready to receive information. And, a great example of this is how like Gen Z learn by asking TikTok those questions and putting it in the TikTok search bar and waiting for somebody to have produced a video that explains it to them in 3 minutes or less.
yeah, yeah. True, true.
Right. So I think the way people are learning is shifting, which, we need to be aware of, I think, as businesses everywhere, because our customers are trying to learn about our products and our sellers need to learn about our products to take them to market too.
Yeah. So Tom, I promised you that I would be the timekeep and not go over. I've failed you in that regard. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Let's move to the lightning round.
Yep.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Question 1. If you were to start a side hustle, what side hustle would that be?
Yeah, this was a no-brainer for me. So outside of work, I love to play golf. Any side hustle would have to be golf related. I do have an idea. I've never had the time to go do it. It's a golf subscription service. So imagine you're a regular golfer. You get to the pro shop. You need like a dozen balls to play because you're an average golfer like me, and you lose a lot of them. But you get there and it's like $50, and you're like, oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
Imagine if just once a month somebody delivered a box of golf balls at a discounted price to your door, and you didn't have to think about it. Like Amazon Subscribe and Save, but for golf stuff.
Interesting. I bet that'd be a winner. Amazon would
I
acquire
think so.
you, I bet.
I think so. So if anybody else wants to start that idea, you just have to list me as your co-founder and give me 50% of the business. Okay.
Um, that's not a big ask at all.
Cool.
Number 2, top 3 books, authors, influencers, podcasts, or any medium that has made an impact in your career.
Yeah. Confession from me, because you'll very often hear like business leaders who say, oh yeah, I read like a book a day and da da da. My secret is I actually hate reading.
Mhm.
I will read if it's something that I really want to learn about, and I'll pick up a book and do it. I have books on the back here actually that I have read, so it's not that I don't read at all. It's just not something that I enjoy. So I tend to use audiobooks if I can to help me out with that. I also like engaging in non-written stuff, so like listening to the podcasts and watching clips and stuff like that. I did actually just read a book called Playing to Win by Lafley Martin, which is really cool. So this is about if you're trying to build a business strategy, it gives you a whole framework of how to do it. So that's one there. And then because I very often work for companies that are either VC or PE funded, I'm kind of quite aware of that whole space and watch technology, and I watch VC and PE quite closely. And so I really enjoy there's a podcast called the All In podcast with 4 guys who are from VC and PE backgrounds, and they're all billionaires, and they all have very unique perspectives that you couldn't ordinarily listen to. So I really enjoy listening to them as well. The other one, and it's actually a really short book, but I have it on here. I'm just going to grab it real quick. It's called Make Your Bed. So there was, an admiral in the US Navy that gave a commencement speech at university a while back. It went viral because he gave this whole speech about Make Your Bed. And this is the very short little book that he wrote about it afterwards. The takeaway from it, though, if you do that one thing every day really, really well, and you set your day off with it, everything else will fall into place from there. So it's about, getting into good habits, doing it religiously, and then, you get to operate at a higher level. So that's another book that I've definitely taken a lot from.
Interesting. Have you done that? Have you started making your bed every day?
I do make my bed every day, but both figuratively and literally. Yeah, there's a few things that I do at the start of every day. So I try to leave the first 30 minutes to 45 minutes of my calendar blocked off to get my priorities sorted at the beginning of every single day. I want to know what meetings I need to have prepped for. I then also color code my calendar with all of the different types of meeting that I've got, and that really helps me hone in on the ones that I might need to do prep for, versus the ones that are kind of more run of the mill that I can just kind of walk into, like a one-to-one, for example, or an internal meeting versus a high value meeting where I'm it's attached to revenue or it's to do with a customer or a partner or something external.
Interesting. Like that. All right. Very cool. And number 3, how do you avoid burnout, and how do you also help your team to do the same?
Yeah, so I'm British, based in the UK, and here in Europe, we're really, really good at taking our PTO.
Mm,
And that is my secret tip. It's, some companies have more paid time off than others, and, you have to work with what you've got for sure. But I've worked with so many teams where even if people got a small PTO allowance, they still weren't taking it. And I think the days have gone of it's seen as like a credible thing to do to not be taking time off. Because for me, if I've just taken a 2-week vacation, which I did in August, by the way, I went to France for 2 weeks.
mm,
I come back so energized and so productive and ready to hit the ground that it beats not taking PTO. And so I encourage my team to do exactly the same. And the guidelines that I give them is you should be thinking about taking 1 full week every quarter as a minimum.
mm. Nice. Well, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
Very cool, Tom. Well, this has been awesome. I've learned a lot here. I've been inspired to go work on our market message fit, or our product market fit, as well as, just talk with some customers and ask them those 2 big questions. Um,
Yeah.
so thank you very much for everybody listening. If you learned something here today, or if you laughed at all, share this with a friend or drop us a 5-star review wherever you get your pods. That'd be really helpful and appreciated. Tom, for folks that want to learn more about you or Acquia, where would you direct them?
Yeah, Acquia.com is the best thing for all things Acquia. If you're interested in me, check out my LinkedIn page. And a little shameless plug, you'll see a new podcast coming from Acquia in just a few weeks from now as well. It's going to be called The Open Source. So keep an eye out
Ooh,
for that one.
cool. I'll definitely check that out. All right, very good, Tom. Stay on the line just a second. We're going to check out. But for everybody else, this has been another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO, and we will see you next time. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us here today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at revenuedrivencmo.com. That's revenuedrivencmo.com. And hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours. Even if you're already a client. If you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization, if you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. And that's just because you're a listener of this podcast. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenuedrivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenuedrivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision.